Hello and welcome to Preseason Reports. It's 2017, obviously, because the year has not changed lately. Today, I am joined by the man-child, TJ Trumaine Jenkins, and the man-bitch, Chris Ransom. I am your host, the man-beast, Mr. Joseph Potter. Now, today we have a very, very special show. We are going over the man who could be the number one overall prospect in the upcoming NFL draft and one of the biggest stars in college football over the last 2 seasons, Notre Dame offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey. So, we've got all this information on McGlinchey, and it's funny, really, because there are a few different opinions on him. I am of the opinion he's damn good, but at the same time, I'm also of the opinion maybe tiny bit overrated. I'm not as really impressed with his ability to latch on to defenders. He gets into the open field, to the second level extremely well, but when he gets there, if he's met with open space, instead of going and finding the nearest body, he kind of looks around a little bit. Yeah, I know he's a tackle, he's not a guard, so he's not going to do that a whole lot unless he's in his own blocking scheme, but it's something to mention. And he lets players get into his body a little bit. And he has low and wide hands. But other than that, Chris, what are your thoughts on him?
Well, with Mike McGlinchey, I remember watching him last year, and this was a guy heading into October. We actually had him as our number one offensive tackle for this draft, or number two, right up there with Cam Robinson. But we heard rumors that he was leaning towards returning to school, so we took him out of the rankings. But pass blocking, footwork, run blocking, footwork, pass blocking, strength, run blocking, strength, zone blocking. McGlinchey had the size, the durability, the experience at both left tackle and right tackle. Mike McGlinchey checked out all of our boxes when we were watching tape on what to look for in an offensive lineman. McGlinchey checked out every single box. And there's a reason this guy is my favorite player in the draft. I have him number one on FanSpeak. I know I've been getting a lot of demands from my writers to put Sam Darnold at one, but there is a reason that Mike McGlinchey is number one on that board. This is the best player in the entire draft, in my opinion. I feel like the Jets would go Darnold at one, but with McGlinchey, this is the best player in the entire draft, in my opinion, and I don't see any flaws or holes in his game at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see if any pass rushing units can pick him apart this year, because I think the only game he struggled in was the game in 2014 when he was a right tackle and he was going up against Hassan Reddick. Maybe that was 2015, but that was really the only game he struggled in, was the game against Temple where he faced Hassan Reddick. That was probably his worst game in his last 2 years as Notre Dame's offensive tackle.
Yeah, well, my list for things to check off is probably a little bit longer than yours, just considering I was a left tackle. So I may have a little bit of an unfair advantage on you in that sense, that I actually got concussions for being a left tackle. But the only two that don't check off on my box are extremely easy to correct.
Can you turn up your volume, Joey?
Yeah. Is that better?
That's a little better.
Okay. Yeah, the only two issues that I have with them, easily correctable, as that don't check off, are the hand placement, because he does have low hands, he does have wide hands. He gets way too out in the shoulders, needs to bring those in. And he lets players get into him a little bit, and he doesn't latch on. He needs to keep his hands out in front, in pass protection, not let him get into his body. I know against Miami, he let him get into his body quite a bit. Can't let him get into his body. Got to keep those guys away. Use whack. I know I've mentioned it before. Wax on, wax off method. It's not just a Karate Kid movie reference. It's not just a martial arts thing. Offensive tackles use it all the time. Okay? Defensive linemen, especially pass rushers, use it all the time. And especially guys with shorter hands or shorter arms, they have to be able to wax on, get those hands off them so they can keep their hands into the body. Don't let the defender get the hands off, but as an offensive tackle, don't let him get the hands, let him get your hands off of him. So that is something that he needs to work on. He gets his hands too wide, easy holding call in the pros. He's got to get his hands inside. Unwritten rule. When it comes to offensive linemen, you're allowed to hold when your hands are inside because you can latch on. That's how you latch on. But if you get your hands outside and you hold the outside of the shoulder pads, that's when they'll call it every single time. So he's got to get those hands inside. He's got to get them up. He's got them around the solar plexus right now. He needs to get them up into the upper chest, right around the heart. He does that. He'll have, and he keeps latching on to players. He'll have all my boxes checked off this year. TJ,
there are only like 4 or 5 tackles in this entire class that can maintain blocks well, and I think McGlinchey is one of those guys because he didn't have any issues with getting his hands on the defender. If anything, it's McGlinchey. He'll get called for holding penalties if he maintains his blocks for too long. I don't think. Yeah. I think that would be more of a concern than him.
Well, and that
able to maintain a block.
Well, and that goes to having his hands too wide. If he did that and kept his hands inside, then he'd be able to maintain and not get hit with those holding penalties. That's part of what I'm talking about. You have to get your hands in. Those two things are not exclusive. Those two things go straight together. So he gets his hands inside, he can take care of both of them. TJ, I know you watched this guy here either last night or this morning. What are your takes on Mike McGlinchey?
Well, I was just on the film yesterday and watching the film what I watched yesterday. It seems like he has great footwork, very much indeed. So like he's very light on his feet. The strength for pass blocking, run blocking is phenomenal. His hands can use a little work, but it's nothing to measure as an ordinary. He might be looking at one of the best pass blockers as far as just doing the job and knowing what situation that the quarterback is in. Run blocking is phenomenal, if you ask me. Overall, I think he might actually go down as the number 1 or number 2 pick for the draft.
Yeah, and
I agree with that, TJ. I think he's no worse than the number 1 or number 2 pick. I think he's the number 1 player, but at the same time, if a team like the Jets lands the number 1 pick, they may waste the pick on a quarterback, and the Bears, who desperately need a left tackle after taking Trubisky at 2, they would probably take this guy in a heartbeat. Local kid, hometown guy, they would take this guy in a heartbeat if he fell to them at 2.
Well, here's something that you guys, neither one of you had mentioned, and I'm actually surprised, Chris, as much as you go into the bathroom for this guy, that you haven't mentioned it, is how he turns defenders. He turns them well. Yeah, both when it comes to the run game especially, he'll get in, when he does get into them, and he has his hands in, he is very good at maneuvering them, turning them the way he needs to turn them. When he has his hands to the outside, that's where he get to the problems that I mentioned with the latching on, keeps his hands wide, keeps them low. When he gets sloppy with his hands, that's when he kind of loses focus. But one thing he does, when he gets his hands in the right positions, he can turn any defender that comes across him. And that's something I'm surprised you didn't mention, is because He has problems when he gets his hands to the outside, but when his hands are inside, he is a dominant force in run blocking when it comes to turning the defender away. And I'm surprised you didn't mention that.
I just don't see any problems with McGlinchey on tape. I've watched a lot of guys about 385 on my FanSpeak 400, and this is the most complete player, the player that had the fewest flaws, and is probably the safest pick out of any player in this entire draft. I just don't see any issues with his tape at all.
Well, right there you have me worried, because when somebody says the safest pick, that means they are a can't-fail prospect. They're safe. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter anything that happens, they cannot fail. And something we have found out in the NFL, there is not a single prospect that you could draft that is a can't-fail prospect. There is no safe pick. Any single one of them can fall flat on their face at any time for any myriad of reasons. And now, something that I want to go over really quickly here is something that we've been catching up on all of his little idiosyncrasies, I guess you could say. And I just want to touch on the schedule for a second, because this schedule is one that I think personally works in his favor. They start out with obviously the blue and gold spring game. That date hasn't been announced, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he's done in the off season, if he's bulked up a little bit, because I think his body can use some strength. I mean, he can put some muscle on. He hasn't finished growing yet. But then he starts with Notre Dame. Then he goes, and that's on September 1st. September 8th, Ball State. Saturday, September 15th, Vanderbilt. Then you have Saturday, September 22nd, Wake Forest. The 29th, Stanford. October 6th, Virginia Tech. October 13th, Pitt. October 20th, they had the bye. October 27th, Navy. November 3rd, Northwestern. But then it gets a little wicked, okay? Because then they get their 2 or their 3 toughest matchups in their last 3 weeks in the season. On November 10th, they host the Florida State Seminoles. Now, Florida State is one of those teams. They're going to come at you. They're going to hit you. They always have good, strong, athletic linemen. And how he performs in that game, I believe personally, is going to say a lot about his draft status. Is he going to be the number 1 or number 2 overall pick? Because I have no doubt during the college football season he's going to be one of the best players. I don't see him going into... I think Michigan...
This Notre Dame schedule is interesting because right now, tape-wise, McGlinchey checks out all the boxes. But that might change in September because you look at the schedule, September 9th versus Georgia. The Bulldogs have an edge rusher named Lorenzo Carter. September 16th, Notre Dame goes to Boston College. We get to see Mike McGlinchey going up against my top edge rusher, Harold Landry. So that's going to be an awesome game.
Yeah, Landry.
September 23rd, they go to at Michigan State. October 21st, Porter Gustin, he's an edge player on USC. He'll match up against McGlinchey. Then they get North Carolina State, who has a first-round edge player in Bradley Chubb. And then November 4th, they get Wake Forest, who has a second-rounder in Duke Ejiofor. Miami, Florida has Chad that guy. I can't remember his name, Chad Thomas. That's it, Chad Thomas. And then to wrap up the season, Stanford is Peter Kalembai. So you're looking at 5 to 6 quality edge rushers that McGlinchey's going to have to face this season. So this is a far more battle-tested schedule for him than what he had to deal with last year.
And Chris, I thank you for letting me rattle on the 2018 schedule instead of the 2017.
No, that's the 2017 schedule.
I know. I was rattling off the 2018 schedule, and you were just like, yeah, look at him. He's just going off like little.
2017 schedule, Joey. I just looked up the schedule on Google.
I know.
NBC
I'm
is
looking.
The same thing. The
I'm looking at the. I'm looking at the schedule. I'm saying, Chris, take the car key.
You're looking at the wrong schedule because
Chris.
Notre Dame's team website and Google both have
Chris.
the 2017 schedule for Notre Dame. They play Georgia on September 9th.
Chris, take the car key out of your ear. Listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth. I said, thank you for not telling me I was reading off the 2018 schedule.
Oh, that's a miscommunication on your end. Okay, I'll take a chill pill.
Chill. Drink some more wine. It'll do a body good. Just like beer. Isn't that right, TJ? Beer does a body good.
This one you might be right, but it's funny.
Yeah, I broke that out at work. Is like, I don't know. He was talking about how he didn't know how to, settle down. And I said beer. And he got this weird look. And I'm like, does a body good. And it was just like a dog, just like he tilted his head. And then he just burst out laughing.
The schedule is really tough. This is a really tough schedule for Notre Dame. I don't know if McGlinchey's faced this many good defenses.
Well,
or this many good edge rushers.
Here's the thing. Yeah, Boston College and Notre Dame. They're going to be two tough early season matchups. Then, on November 11th and November 25th, you have the Miami Hurricanes, which always have the most athletic people in the country playing for him. That's going to be a test of his athletic ability. Then you have Stanford. They always have some of the smartest people in the country playing for him. He's going to have to think, what are they doing? What schemes are they running out of that 4-3? So those two are going to be extremely difficult games at the end. Then you have the two extremely difficult Boston College, Georgia Bulldogs, because Georgia is always a tough matchup. So those four matchups in themselves are going to be difficult. And then Michigan State, who always has a tough defense.
Yeah, last year the only tough opponent McGlinchey faced was Bradley Chubb out of North Carolina State, who has a current first-round grade at the moment. And Porter Gustin's a guy who's a riser, but at the same time, people didn't take notice of him until the end of last year. And Notre Dame had a very easy schedule in terms of edge rushers. They went 4-8, but they faced a lot of mediocre edge players, whereas this year they play a lot better edge players.
Well,
so it's really going to be interesting to see how they hold their own against these guys this year.
Well, you also have to look at it this way. The last year, Notre Dame had a terrific left side of their offensive line and a horrific right side. So, how are they going to deal with this? Are they going to have the left side try to do some more pulls with the guard and tackle, try to get out to the left side more? Are they going to try to offset the right side? Or do they have some guys coming in that are going to really step up their game on that right side? So, I mean, all of these things could potentially affect McGlinchey due to how the coaches decide to handle it. Also, you got a new quarterback coming in. You have a new running back. So there are going to be different play styles that he's going to have to adjust to. So this is going to be a big year for McGlinchey, both with schedule and everything that goes into it. And we know he has good size. We're going to see, did he increase his strength? Is he getting his hands inside? Because every prospect every college player has flaws. Every single one of them. And this is what, and Chris, as you know, and TJ, as you will learn, I will pull out flaws that nobody will even think about because there is not a single flawless college player who has ever played the game.
Andrew Luck was the closest thing we had to a flawless college prospect. And even some scouts thought he threw the long ball into coverage a little bit too much during his junior year.
Yeah, so he wasn't flawless. He threw the long ball into coverage too much. And
well,
that's...
I think that, he definitely was overhyped coming out of Stanford. I think he's been a great franchise quarterback, but at the same time, you can definitely argue he got oversold to an extent because he's had years where he's had anywhere between 10 and 18 interceptions, and
he's
dealt with injuries. So you can make that argument because Luck has no championships to show for it, whereas Russell Wilson has one and a second Super Bowl appearance.
Well, be that as it may,
I think Seattle has a better defense and a better offensive line in place during that period. I think Luck might have that now with his offensive line, but their defense still needs some work.
Yeah, it's possible. And, so I'm going to go and I'm going to ask this question to both of you guys. What do you believe McGlinchey can lead this Notre Dame team from the left tackle position, and what position, and given the schedule, what type of final record do you foresee these guys having? You don't have to go through each game and predict each game. Just off the top of your head, what do you think these guys, Notre Dame, with McGlinchey as his first year as the full-time undisputed leader and captain, what schedule do you think he leads them to? Chris?
Yeah, I'm looking at Notre Dame's schedule here. I'm going to predict a 5-7 record. They improve, but they still come short of a bowl game. Because I think they can beat Temple. I think they can beat Boston College and Michigan State to start the year 3-1. Heck, I think they could even beat Miami, Ohio, and North Carolina to be 4-1 or 5-1. But after that, you get USC, North Carolina State, Wake Forest, Miami, Florida, Navy, and Stanford to wrap out the year. So this is a team that could start 5-1 and end the year on a 6-game losing streak.
Okay, now I'm going to stop you there because this game, Saturday, September 16th, anybody who ever listens to this, mark it on your schedule, because usually we do it's like in professional football where Kerb and myself will do the Dallas versus Cleveland thing. September 16th in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, my Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the team, well, at one point in time, they could have been my alma mater if I would have had the money to chill out. Go against Grace's Boston College Eagles. Now, it's just like myself and Kerm. This is going to be if you look on Facebook, I'm sure there'll be a post by either myself or Grace, and we will be going at it down through the entire game. Anytime we get a chance. On Saturday, I work at 2 o'clock. Well, hell, I got 2 hours to go down through there. Oh, look at that. I got another break. I can go down through there. Yeah, so we're going to be going at it. Hell, I might even take the 16th off. Simply so I can go in there and I can be right there and we can go at it, because Boston College versus Notre Dame, draft evolution, we're going to go at it one more time. And this is going to be a fun game. For once, it's like, go Notre Dame. beat Boston College. Grace, don't kill me. TJ, that being said, what do you think, man? Where do you think Boston College, or where do you think Notre Dame goes under the leadership of McGlinchey?
Just what y'all was talking about, and seeing how their schedule really is tough, and they have to go against pass rushers for this season. They might go somewhere between 5-7 and 6.
Yeah, 5-7 sounds about right. That's it. And now we're gonna get on to another player. Chris has been banging.
Yeah, and that player
things.
is Quentin Nelson, the left guard for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Yeah,
this guy does a lot of the same things that Mike McGlinchey does tape-wise. Just seems very complete to me, and at the same time, he's a guy who really did well against Michigan State's Malik McDowell, pancaking him to the ground. And for me, he's a top 15 pick, no question about it. He actually played left tackle in high school, but he had to kick inside to guard because Notre Dame had Ronnie Stanley, a eventual first-round pick at left tackle, and they had McGlinchey at right tackle. So he was forced inside to guard, even though he was a tackle in high school, and he thrived in that guard position, kind of like Zach Martin, who played tackle at Notre Dame but kicked inside to guard when he got to the NFL.
Yeah, and remember, this is a preview of Quentin Nelson. He will have his own show later down the line. And as you said, Chris, I've seen him.
The thing with Harold Landry, really quickly, we touched on the Notre Dame-Boston College game. Notre Dame can double-team Landry with Nelson and McGlinchey. If they just want to obsolete him and dare the rest of the defense to go after their quarterback, they can just double-team him and take him out of the game.
Isolate, Chris. The word you're looking for is isolate, not obsolete.
Yes, they can isolate him.
Yeah, he will not be obsolete in this game. I'm sorry. They can isolate him, but they cannot obsolete him. You're not Matt Hardy. Stop it. Something with Nelson, I've noticed his strength is a little bit inconsistent at times. There are a couple times I saw him get pushed back when I was watching tape earlier this morning. Other times I saw him just road grade people, like you said, with the pancaking of McDowell. So he's a little inconsistent, but, that consistency can be worked on. A lot of times consistency and experience go hand in hand. So, I'm not going to harp on that too much because there's a good chance he corrects that simply, by watching some film and saying, this is why I was inconsistent, this is why I got pushed back on this play. It may just be a simple, hey, he knocked my hands away. I got pushed back a little bit because I had to adjust. So, it could be something that simple as, getting your hands a little bit quicker. But I love his low center of gravity and his technique. So, those are two things that I'm really going to be watching for when we do his profile and when we do his report. So, Nelson is another guy, and the left side of that Notre Dame offensive line is going to be absolutely spectacular this year. Don't you agree, guys?
Nelson. I think he's just like the thing. I think I said his name wrong. I'd probably say he's more of a run blocker than a pass blocker. He has great footwork. I think he's at least a top 10 pick. One thing I do like about Nelson is that he does have similar traits as McLean. I can't pronounce his name right.
Yeah, it's no problem, DJ. I completely understand it. When I first heard of him, it took me a few tries myself. Darn Irishman. But, yeah, I agree. Every time I saw him get pushed back, it was in pass protection. Never saw him get pushed around in run blocking. total beast against the run. So it may be something with pass protection. He's got a low center of gravity, so I'm sure he'll clear that up this year. And so with that preview and the completion of the Mike McGlinchey profile during the preseason, we are going to go ahead and wrap this up. And if you like this video, feel free to like and share. For TJ, Chris, everyone at the Evolution Network, I'm Joseph Potter. Have fun and take care.